Welcome to Things I Can't Say, the podcast for the things parents whisper, not post. I'm Annie, a parent who's walked through the quiet, lonely hallways of raising a child with traits that don't fit neatly into any of the parenting books, or on anyone's social media feed either. Each week we'll open the door to stories that rarely get told out loud. I'll start with mine, and then you'll hear from other parents, mental health professionals, and people who know what it means to live in the gray instead of the black and white. This is a place where shame loses its power, where complexity isn't feared but explored, and where love doesn't have to be easy in order to be real. If you've ever felt like no one else could possibly understand, you're not alone here. This is Things I Can't Say, and I am so glad you're here. Welcome back and welcome to high school. For context in this time frame, our marriage was falling apart. The stress of being on call, being the probation officer, the corrections officer, the therapist, the medic, the everything 24 hours a day was far too much. We had just moved to a new home. My husband had just started a new job. The stress was significant. We had started our son on some psychiatric medications in middle school, and we had some feeling that the psych meds were causing some negative side effects. So some of the episodes he was having, we felt were caused by the psych meds. So we had changed psych meds a few times. We had done genetic testing to try to find the right psych meds, and we were still significantly struggling on the psych med end. He started his freshman year in a public school, not a huge school, enough that there were close eyes on him with his IEP. I felt like things were going okay. We got through September with episodes happening in the house. Very odd behavior would kind of come out of nowhere. He called them tick attacks, where it felt like his Tourette's tics, where his brain was just telling him to do these very odd behaviors. He would start barking like a dog. He would get stuck in this trance-like state where there was no real communication, but that seemed to happen at home and not really at school. We got into October. I suspect there may have been some substance use at that point, but this also all could have been psych med related. I'm not 100% sure. There was an evening that we decided to go to the park close to our house and play basketball with the kids. We drove there in my husband's car. It was like a 2-minute drive to the park. It started off fine. He was having a fine evening. He seemed with it. By way of communicating with us. He started playing basketball, and then it was very shortly where he was just disconnected, like not really responding to anything. We decided we needed to go home because it was clear we were heading into one of these episodes, and getting him into the car was next to impossible. Again, this is a high school age boy now. He finally got into the back of my husband's SUV, and we started driving home, and the behavior in the back was bizarre. We pulled into the driveway, and he refused to get out of the car and started kicking and screaming and throwing what sounded like he was being kidnapped in the back of our car. We called police, we called an ambulance because it sounded like we were traumatizing this kid in our vehicle. When they got there and they were finally able to communicate with him, he let them know he had no idea who we were. He didn't know where we were at. We were at our house in our driveway, but he did not know where we were. He did not want to be with us. He was terrified of us. He was sure we were kidnapping him. They convinced him to go into our house to try to look at his room to see if he recognized his room, and that did not go very well. I mean, the police did an amazing job. The paramedics did an amazing job, but he was just completely in psychosis at that point. We had been to the hospital so many times at that point, um, like in the 20s number of times in the last year. We requested that they go to a completely different hospital because we didn't know what to do. Our child was clearly mentally struggling, and they took him to a new hospital who did a much better job in keeping him in a psych hold in the ER until they could find a place for him. He ended up with a 10-day psych stay where they tried to get to the bottom of what was happening, and they decided to take him off of a psych med that should not have caused that side effect, but it seems like it did. It took a few days to get him back down to a regulated place and able to come home. He then did a 30-day day treatment program with a lot of supervision and psychiatrist and therapist, and did really well there, and we were able to get him back into school in December. What I recall is the second half of that school year not being too awful. Um, there was another girlfriend that came into the picture. She seemed to be pretty good for him. She seemed to be supportive of him. The communication between the two of them seemed to be good. She was at our house all the time. I didn't see a lot of negative in their relationship. And then he started having seizures, which were diagnosed as non-epileptic seizures. That increased. So we're having seizures, we're having these weird episodes still. We got into the summer between freshman and sophomore year. Him and his girlfriend broke up, and his behavior again shifted. This time I can say for sure that substances were involved. And we got to a place where trusting him at all was impossible. He was running away, and not just like leaving to go do things, but he would run away and be really, really cruel in his words, um, sneaking out. The pictures, text messages on his phone that we would find were awful. It was a summer that felt like we could not keep up with him. It just did not stop. There was one time that he ran away. I believe it was the end of that summer. Um, he, let me go back a little bit. He started a new anxiety medication, and he seemed perfectly fine. We watch medicine really closely now because we've had a few scares with psych meds, and he started a new psych med in a whole new family of medications. Again, shouldn't have the weird side effects. He seemed fine, like perfectly fine. He went to bed that night, told us good night. Everything was fine. And then at like 2:00 in the morning, packed up the most random bag of stuff, took our family dog, and left. And then the communication with him was awful, calling us names, saying awful things. The police got involved. And because of the way he was talking and the way he was acting, they took him again to the hospital for a psych hold. He was there 24 hours. They released him. I said I was very uncomfortable with them releasing him. They did anyway. He came home. He was home for 5 minutes and ran away again. And the police brought him back home. It was just this constant, could not keep up with it. We got into his sophomore year of high school, and he was having the seizures every day at school. They're non-epileptic seizures. There's not a treatment for it. It's psychological, basically. So he would have a seizure every day, and I would be picking him up within a couple hours into the school day, every single day, and bringing him home. His behavior to our faces was great. Like, while he's home, he's wonderful, and easygoing and everything's fine, but away from us, it was not good behavior. He finally asked us if he could go and stay with our older daughter for a few days, or if he could move in with her. And we agreed that he could go and stay with her for a few days because we all just needed a break. She was willing to take him. She was helping. Because of his autism and his prenatal drug exposure, he qualified for disability services. So there was payment for support services, and she was one of his support workers. So she received payment for helping. So she was willing to have him come stay at her house. He went down there, and within 2 or 3 days of him being gone from our house, our daughter asked to speak to me. And she sat in my bed and asked me some questions and shared some things that made it abundantly clear that our son had sexually abused her. And I have her permission to share that. I again called and reported that. She was interviewed, did a forensic interview, and her story remained the same this time. And I had zero doubt. With the way that she told her story, I had zero doubt of what happened to her. We chose not to tell our son right away. We requested that CPS not tell our son right away because we'd had multiple instances of him running away so far. We knew this was a touchy subject for him that he did not like talked about. He was starting to struggle at our daughter's house as well at that point. She had caught him using substances. He was making threats to run away. There were already things happening there, and so we didn't want him to know until he had to know. So CPS did all of the background work until they had to interview him. I picked him up and drove him to the CPS office and told him on the way there where we were going. He was very, very angry, quiet, but angry. There was the CPS worker and a detective there. The CPS worker started, asked him just some general questions. What do you like to do in your free time? What do you like to do at school? That kind of stuff. Our son answered it fine. The detective then stepped in, read him his rights, let him know he had the right to a lawyer, and then started to ask our son questions. And our son immediately requested a lawyer, and the interview stopped. I drove our son back to our daughter's house, and I let CPS know I didn't know what to do because he clearly couldn't come back to our house. They didn't really have any answers for that. He's getting worse at our daughter's house by way of his choices there. Uh, and we began to look at group home options because he qualified for disability services. That was the only option available at that point, was to go into a disability-based group home. There was a wait to get into one. And so we waited from November until February, hoping we could keep him safe enough, keep everybody safe enough to get to the time that a group home opened up for him. And in February, we moved him into a group home. Now, at one point, he agreed to a group home. At one point, he was going to drug and alcohol counseling, and they had talked about group home options, and he was very open to that option. So he didn't argue it a ton. He had started to make some friends near our daughter. There was a new girlfriend near our daughter. So he was not as happy about it when we finally had the opening to take him. But at this point, our marriage was again falling apart. There was so much stress, it felt like we could not breathe. Our older daughter was struggling significantly with having him in the home. Um, it was a struggle all the way around. Our son made it through his freshman year. He made it 1 month into his sophomore year, 1 or 2 months, and we were stuck. We had We had no options left. And while we at that point had a strong team of people, if you've heard of wraparound services or haven't, it's community-based support that is strong support. Like, we had a strong team of people around us, and it was not enough at that point. There was not enough options or answers or help for him. So we got him into the group home. And I think that will be a whole nother episode, because that again led to a whole nother shift in behavior that um, is a lot to talk about. So I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for being here, listening, feeling, and sitting with the hard stuff. If you've ever whispered a story like mine, I'd love to hear from you. You can leave me a message at mombehindthescenes.com, because every story told gives someone else permission to share theirs. This is Things I Can't Say, the podcast for things you whisper, not post. Until next time, take care of yourself.